My grandfather, Jesse Mitchell, was a realtor in the early 1900s. And then when Industrial Savings Bank opened in 1913 by John Lewis, he worked at that bank as an officer. He was a vice president. That bank closed in 1932 when President Roosevelt closed all of the banks in the country to deal with the Great Depression, and that bank, Industrial Savings Bank, was not allowed to reopen.
Industrial was the only black bank, and the white banks were nowhere near, and they weren't particular about dealing with black people. Washington was a very segregated city back there at that time. Only difference between it and a city in Mississippi is that you were not forced to sit in the back on the streetcars.
It was extremely important for there to be a bank at that location in that community at the time. African Americans could deposit money elsewhere, but could not borrow.
The initial board of directors were my grandfather, Jesse Mitchell, my father, who was also very young at that time, B. Doyle Mitchell Sr. In addition to them, it was Tally Holmes, Isaac Mason, William Carter, and William Carter's son.
And since that was in the midst of the Shaw neighborhood, which was a thriving African-American community at the time, that location was available, and he and others sold stock and opened up the bank on August 20th, 1934.
There were 484 shareholders that had used their savings to help open this bank, and the bank had to raise $65,000.
My fondest memory was Jesse Mitchell sitting out in the front lobby of the bank on 11th Street.
He wanted his family to follow in his footsteps. So he probably had some impact on my father, B. Doyle Mitchell, getting into the banking industry. And my father was 21 when he started at Industrial Bank.
My father took over the bank in the mid-50s after my grandfather retired, and then eventually passed away. I got involved with the bank at the age of 16 when I started working summers. I had to work extremely hard. Being the president's son, I always felt like I had to be twice as good just to be equal. There was a lot of trust our early customers and customers today had in Industrial Bank. Even though many of those customers had lost money from a failure of a previous bank, they still trusted my grandfather to bring their deposits to Industrial Bank of Washington.